And with that, let's keep the good times rolling. Next up on the docket, we've got the team from Aiven. From Aiven, we have Jeremy Heller, Senior Product Marketing Manager of Platform. Welcome, Jeremy. How you doing today?
Great, can you hear me?
Yes, hearing you now.
Right.
Awesome, perfect. Excited to have you on. You're ready to go. I'm going to be joining Jeremy here for Q&A. So as those questions come in, feel free, keep those coming in during the presentation, and I'm going to do my best to pose and voice as many of those at the end of the presentation here from you guys and get all the good information you're looking for. And with that, Jeremy, I'm going to hop off, let you do your thing, and see you in a little bit.
Great, thanks, Mackenzie.
My
Cool,
pleasure.
so let's jump into it. So my name is Jeremy. I'm actually a senior product manager at Aiven on our platform. Been at Aiven about a year and 4 months now. And I want to just give you guys a summary on cloud today, cloud costs, what Aiven is, bring your own cloud model, what that's all about, multi-cloud, some cool things you can do there. Yeah, so got a cool deck for you guys prepared. Let's hit it. So first, what is Aiven? You might not have heard of Aiven before. What are we all about? And Aiven, we are a data infrastructure platform. We call ourselves your trusted data platform. With us, you can stream data, either real time or message queues. You can store data in databases or analytics, or even search. And you can also serve data to applications through Aiven on any of the main hyperscalers, as well as some other players like DigitalOcean or some of the neoclouds that are popping up. Yeah, we've been around since about 2016. We hit the scene and we've been growing our portfolio since then, based in Helsinki, Finland. So what is it that we actually offer? We offer a suite of managed services that make managing data infrastructure really, really easy. Not like it was in the past. So if you need things like Apache Kafka, which can be a real headache to self-manage at a high SLA, we have that. If you need relational databases, one of the new things we have is AlloyDB Omni from Google. We offer that on the main 3 hyperscalers. You get a integration with their, I think, Vector AI. So you can do some LLM stuff there with vector database and embeddings, as well as PG and MySQL, the standard database, open source databases. We're primarily an open source company. We try to run vanilla open source wherever we can, and we would contribute upstream. And we have a whole suite of extensions you can use with our databases. We have caching services at the ready for you guys on any of the clouds. Data warehousing with ClickHouse, super fast. I'm a big fan of ClickHouse. Our SRE team, they manage a metric service called Thanos. We use it in-house. We also offer it to customers, as well as OpenSearch for like logs or traces or full text search you want to do. Advanced use cases there, as well as Grafana. You can visualize Grafana. Everything's fully managed. So you can deploy your services with us through Terraform. You can integrate directly into your infrastructure pipelines. We have a Kubernetes operator to manage through your Kubernetes clusters, as well as directly through our API. All our documentation is public. We have a CLI you can also use, as well as a console to get familiar, look at metrics, things like that. And we offer a suite of integrations, like with Datadog and Prometheus, that all of your services with Aiven can integrate. So it's all about making an easier experience with some of this complex data technology. So that's a overview of what Aiven is, what we build on the product side. Let's take a look, though. We want to talk about costs and cloud costs. We all know that cloud costs are getting quite high, and it's hard to wrangle them in. In preparation for this webinar today, I did some research out there, and a good data point I found is that about 32%, an estimate of 32% of all cloud spending in 2024 was wasted. Almost $226 billion out the door on cloud resources we didn't actually need to spend. So why is that? Like, what's the reason here? And Cloud is a double-edged sword. It's very agile. You can spin up anything you need on demand. But if you're like me, you might have left some resources unattended, some EC2 instances sitting around your cloud accounts, and they're costing you money. They're burning a hole in your pocket. Things like networking, static IP addresses, all of this really adds up, and it's really hard to get a handle on it. FinOps is a thing, maybe not as impactful in every area that we hoped for. It's definitely a step in the right direction. And additionally, cloud is expensive because each cloud is unique. They have unique implementations for identity and access management, unique implementations for storage and authentication and networking policies, and all of it really is different with each cloud. And the more clouds you have in your environments, the more specialized knowledge you need, and the less nicely everything plays together. And finally, costs are high because we're locked in with our vendors. If you go with really cool serverless solutions, what I've seen in the past in companies I've worked for is that we could never move away from a serverless solution because it was unique and proprietary. And even if you go to a different serverless solution, you can't just migrate from A to B. There's a painful process in that. And some of the providers, they know this and they price accordingly. Also, closed source software can keep you locked in because maybe extensions aren't compatible. Different things block any kind of portability you might try to implement, reducing your leverage. So this is a bit of the situation we're in right now. How do we start coming out of this? So there's some basic steps and some more complex steps. Where everyone, I think, is at today for sure is eliminating waste. Recommendations I always give is that we need to make sure we're always tagging our resources. Everything that has a price attached to it in the cloud needs to be tagged so we can track it back to why is this resource being created, what team or what service or what project is creating these resources and responsible for them, so we can start to get an understanding of where our dollars are going. We want to make sure we're regularly analyzing our cloud invoices. There are FinOps tools that can do this, and have categorized all of the different millions of SKUs with the providers. You can pay for those tools if you want, but make sure you're looking through your invoices, and make sure to really shut down unused services. This is on the team responsibility themselves. It's very hard to do this centralized, but idle services, you can shut down things on the weekends, but really it comes down to shutting down any kind of waste, floating around static IP addresses that are costing you money. These kind of things, we want to get rid of them. But that's not going to be enough. You can get a nice one-time quick win by shutting down a bunch of idle stuff in your cloud. But to really move things to the next level, you have to gain control over your infrastructure and your architecture. So costs are really driven by your architectural choices. Once you get a handle on resource creation and all the waste, it really comes down to the architectural choices you make. Each cloud has different implications for your architecture, be it networking costs, be it individual compute costs, and all the different service intricacies that each provider offers. And your architecture choices make a huge impact here. Also, to gain control of your costs is you want to be able to scale up and down and not just over provision all of the time to meet peaks in demand for your systems. So you're going to want to be able to scale compute and storage up and down, even independently if you can. My recommendation is still to avoid serverless. I'm not a big fan of it, but that can really help you also separate compute and storage and be very workload efficient. If that's the architecture you want to go, but really focus on your architecture. Additional way to control cloud costs is through managed services, the likes that Aiven offers. There's also many managed services out there, even from the main cloud service providers. And the benefit of them is you get a really high SLA without having to have the overhead internally to maintain that SLA. Say if you want to maintain a Kafka cluster, internally you might need big teams to have a 4.9 SLA on that. Same goes with databases. So it's a trade-off about how much do you really want to do in-house. So In cases with high SLAs, managed services, I find can reduce your total cost of ownership. And if you get scalability with that, you can only just have to pay for what you need and not anymore. Near and dear to my heart, I've worked a lot on this in Aiven, is the bring your own cloud model. Many vendors offer this outside of the big hyperscalers. And what it is a fully managed service with that same SLA can run in your own cloud accounts securely through cross-tenant authentication. And with Aiven, for example, you get our entire suite of services that I showed earlier, all running within your own cloud account. You get access to all the same dev tools we talked about in the console, all of this running in your own account. We have a self-service mechanism. You can get started in about 10 minutes or so, and then you can just go to town with services, all running in your account. It takes about 10 minutes per environment or less. The big deal here is that with Bring Your Own Cloud, you can use your commitments, so your capacity reservations, things like savings plans, committed use discounts. You can use all of those with your suite of managed services. You can pool compute savings plans, things like this, and really cut down your TCO. You can also consume your services through the marketplace. So if you have a commitment with one of the existing providers, you can use those credits or those commitment agreements with your third-party managed service provider. So I think it's really cool. Additional benefits of it, so besides just the cost reductions, you can own all of your data within your own account if that's important to you based on your industry. You can also get more fine-grained network access control. So we do standardize the networking we expect, but there are opportunities to further isolate and restrict networking if that's important to your industry, as well as data locality and complying with compliance such as PCI in the financial industry or HIPAA in healthcare. So there are some industry-specific benefits to Bring Your Own Cloud. These are things you want to look for if you're analyzing a BYOC vendor. What do they really offer to mitigate also complexity? So when I talk about Bring Your Own Cloud and what's out there on the market in general, I think of it actually in three layers. So the bottom layer, there, number one, is you need something self-service. Aiven has been doing Bring Your Own Cloud for years before I came, and it was a heavy and manual configuration with the SRE teams and passing back and forth configurations, and cross-tenant authentication was a challenge. You really want to make sure that there's a self-service or a very quick way to get up and running in place that's dependable and is not going to incur a lot of overhead, because with a managed service, that's part of the promise, is that you're reducing overhead, you're not adding to it. This middle layer is that you want to be able to take advantage of cost reductions with BYOC. So we talked about discounts, reservations, things like that, but there are additional features you could think about to reduce your total cost of ownership, like cold storage for your data. So Kafka and ClickHouse, they offer things like tiered storage where you can send data into cold storage, into cloud object storage, and save some money that way, as well as dynamically adjusting how much disk storage your services need. So that's part of right sizing to your use case. So that's part of the BYOC package you need to take a look at and see what opportunities are out there to optimize. And finally, the third layer, this is what I consider the icing on the cake or the cherry, is depending on your industry, you might have enhanced networking needs to integrate with your existing IT infrastructure and your cloud environments. You might need special networking features like private link or private service connect for point-to-point connections, as well as limiting ingress and egress traffic to your workloads, preventing anything from going over the public internet, things like that. But that's really the cherry on the top. You might not need to pay for that from a vendor if you don't absolutely need it. Yeah, so I think about the three layers of BYOC. So we can all talk a little bit about multi-cloud. Multi-cloud has good sides and bad sides. It could even have a little bit of a bad rap because of complexity, but there are some very, very interesting architectural benefits that multi-cloud can enable depending on your use case. So The first thing with multi-cloud is that you can compare services and pricing between providers and you can literally use the best services for you. So if we think about Azure offers no network charges for egress, for example. So your architecture could be looking different in Azure than it would on a different provider. And there are many, many, many cases like this between the providers. So a deep analysis on the pricing models between the cloud providers can yield benefits with your architecture. So when you're making architecture decisions, you really want to compare the service pricing and pricing models between the providers for the components you want to use. The second part about multi-cloud that can benefit you on the cost side is with a platform like Aiven plus Bring Your Own Cloud, you can literally run a managed service on any provider that you want that provides you with the cheapest infrastructure in any of the global regions. So you can cherry pick where you want to put your services. You can keep them in the same region, but you can just change the provider and run on the compute that's most appropriate for you. Also considering the architecture of the CPUs and what kind of instances you want to run on. But these kind of things, each provider has differences in each of their data centers. So you can take advantage of those with multi-cloud. Multi-cloud also can give you the ability to avoid vendor lock-in, especially if you avoid like the serverless route or the proprietary technology route. Then you are more readily able to move your workloads. If terms or conditions change with your provider, you have that flexibility, you have that escape clause. If you're locked in, like we saw with Broadcom and VMware, they can get you on pricing. So not always cost related. There's actually a duality here between cost and high availability, but I want to talk about high availability. And if you go a multi-cloud route, if you need extreme high availability across data centers and regions, you can do cross-cloud provider high availability. Aiven's enabled this with their databases, but you can do a failover between providers if you want. So that doesn't always help your cost because you have to run instances in both these providers, and HA is not free, but that is a benefit you can get through multi-cloud. And finally is minimizing data transfer. Oracle's made a big push in this about going through their backbone between cloud providers, and there are ways to minimize data transfer through multi-cloud. But like I like to say, you need to always weigh potential savings through multi-cloud with the complete complexity and operational burden that could have on your teams. Again, it's really focused on your architecture with multi-cloud. So wrapping things up with Aiven, I have a few examples here of customers that are seeing success. You can find more of these kind of success stories on our website, but I picked these because they're ones I directly work with and I know the customers. So Clarity, we work with them. They are a Internet of Things endpoint security company, and they got going with us with a single AZ Kafka deployment and a bring your own cloud model, and they brought their costs down like 72%, 73%, something like that, and slashed their networking costs. And things like that are possible, and they get, of course, the managed service benefits that we talked about earlier. So it's really a core part to their business. Sophos is a similar story. They're a cybersecurity company processing many, many events through Kafka, and they switched to Aiven. A couple of years ago, they switched to Aiven. They were on the fully managed standard. So Aiven owned Aiven tenant, so to say, Apache Kafka, and then they decided to try out BYOC when we had that available via self-service. And they just reduced their TCO additionally 30 to 40% again in BYOC, applying all their AWS credits and special pricing that they have. So a big benefit there. It's a core part of their business. So they process, I forget how many events per day, but it's like a trillion. It's a huge number of events they're processing. Dojo is a similar story. They actually use most of our platform. They started out with Kafka and expanded, and for them, it's all about easing the overhead. They're a payments company in Great Britain, and So Alad here, he talked to me about how much less overhead they have in managing services, especially databases and Kafka. So yeah, there's examples here. Again, I implore you to look at your architecture when looking at costs. And yeah, I think with that, we can do a little Q&A round. Yeah, so.
All right, we've
yeah.
had quite a few questions come in, so I'm excited to pick your brain here. And yeah, let's just dive into it. First one I've got on the queue, Jeff is saying good morning and asking, do you work with mid-market and SMB customers at Aiven?
So yes, I work with primarily mid-market and enterprise is where I've had most touch points. We're doing additional outreach to SMB customers, but I haven't had too much contact with them yet.
Okay.
Yeah.
Excellent. Nick is asking, does Aiven offer trials?
Yeah, we have a free tier that is limited to a certain selection of services. And then we also have a trial you can do.
Okay.
Yeah, they're making some updates to the trial terms right now.
Perfect. And if people want to find that, should they hop over, just like go to your website and
yeah, you can go to aiven.io. Let's see. Yeah, you can click get started for free on aiven.io. Yeah.
Perfect. Awesome. And actually, speaking of that, I've just launched the poll for everyone out there. So if you're looking for additional information from the team at Aiven, you can fill in that poll if you want data sheets, white papers, case studies, pricing, demos, all that good stuff. It's there. I'm also going to pin that up so that if anyone wants to grab a link and do that, they can do that easily. And let's keep some good questions going. Next up, I've got, what are the 3 major drawbacks in doing your own BYOC when compared to using a third-party cloud solution?
Let's see. So doing your own BYOC, I might not understand the question. There could be a misunderstanding from how I described it, but BYOC is something that's typically offered by a third-party cloud solution. That's not one of the main hyperscalers, because the hyperscalers aren't incentivized to allow you to run on other hyperscaler infrastructure.
Okay.
But most third-party vendors are either offering BYOC already or trending that way. So, Cal, I'm not sure if you're trying to build your own BYOC to offer to other customers. I don't know the context there. Maybe we could chat in the chat here about it if you want to share more context.
Yeah, Cal, if you have some more context about what you're asking, feel free to throw that in there and we can follow up. And in the meantime, okay, I've got a question here, kind of forecasting future a little bit. How is the landscape of cloud cost optimization expected to evolve in the coming years? What's on your radar?
Yeah, so I'm seeing some actually resistance around some of the FinOps tools. They are sometimes charging the 1% of your total cloud spend, a bit anathema to the idea of reducing cloud spend. They can be definitely beneficial for getting insights, but the trend I'm seeing is really diving deep in the architecture. I think I covered that a bit in the presentation, but it's really about going from eliminating waste is sort of last year's cloud trends or the state of cloud FinOps, and really right now where we are is getting into the architecture, improving the architecture, and making that visible to leadership about what architectural changes need to happen and why. I think that's the big push, is explaining the business value of making architecture changes.
And if someone is kind of in that pickle, where they're like, hey, I know that I want to make some changes here, but explaining it to leadership seems to be a hurdle or a barrier. Do you have any tips or tricks or suggestions you could give?
Yeah, my tips is to simplify and think in impact of the business over a certain time period. So if you could try to calculate out what the impact of different scenarios are over, say, a 3-year time period, that has a lot stronger chance of resonating than talking technical details at the leadership level.
Okay, nice.
Yeah.
Thank you for that. Next one I've got in the queue here. What are the most common areas where companies overspend in the cloud, and how can these be addressed?
Okay, was it the top three areas?
Most common areas.
Most
So,
common. Yeah, so most common is going to be over provisioning. So having services that are, you have more resources than you need for your workload, or it's going to be typically around network and not having clarity on ways to reduce or optimize where data is being sent. Typically, this can be because it goes between team boundaries and you're just sending data from A to B, but that can really rack up. And another tricky thing is that the providers tend to change their networking pricing from time to time. And that can happen without really anyone noticing. So I think network is a big one that's being overspent on.
okay, awesome.
Yeah.
Thanks for that. We did get a little update from Cal here. So, rephrasing his question or their question, what are the three pain points of doing a BYOC?
Okay. So one of the pain points that has to be overcome is the number one, the shared responsibility. Because you're in a cross-tenant or cross-cloud account situation, that the responsibility needs to be clear between both parties. Like if the infrastructure changes happen on the customer side and the vendor side, there needs to be resiliency there. Your vendor needs to be resilient to any kind of changes or unforeseen things. Let's see, the other three pain points. Well, from the vendor side is all about monitoring and visibility um, into the infrastructure, so into the networking infrastructure specifically. And really, you want to focus on least privileged access. That you have ephemeral access. You're not giving any kind of long-lived access to a third party. Yeah, and that permissions are downscoped as much as possible because you want to have isolated. You really want to isolate any kind of access within your cloud environments to third parties and have it consolidated in a certain area. So,
Okay, excellent. Is there like a dashboard or a place or even like automated pings of saying like, hey, this has been open too long, or place you can kind of overview some of those third-party accesses?
we do it mostly through the Terraform directly. We
Okay.
do have a console and we're working on additional features. So it's not a product that's set in stone, but we're continually innovating there. So we have some proofs of concept rolling out in those regards. Like I said, I'm from the product team, and these are
Yeah,
things we're actively on our radar.
great, exciting stuff. Mark is asking, how does Aiven ensure the scalability and performance of its services under high load?
Okay, so we have actually an extensive management platform that we have built up with extensive alerting and monitoring built in. So we have our own operations and site reliability engineering internally. We have thresholds that we know the services perform under, and we also offer you the ability to view metrics and observe yourself the performance of the services, as well as you can scale as needed. I mean, if you need caching, we offer that. Depends a bit on what service specifically you're talking about. But yeah, we offer vertical scalability as well as horizontal scalability, and we have extensive orchestration platform we built over time.
All right. Excellent. We are pushing up against time, but let's say we'll wrap with one final question here. Someone is asking for like a little clarity around this. So what is the bring your own cloud model, and how does it differ from traditional cloud service models?
Sure. So bring your own cloud is where a fully managed high SLA service runs on your infrastructure, allowing you to use discounts and own all your data. And a traditional model is where a provider, so a third party, has your data. It's encrypted, of course, but data all is running there, and things like discounts and burning down your commitments can be more challenging. Discounts completely out of the question. Marketplaces might be a bit more challenging. So BYOC is all about running on your infrastructure while someone else manages.
Okay, beautiful.
Yeah.
And with that, I'm going to say thank you so much. Been an absolute pleasure to pick your brain and try to do our best answering most of these questions here. But any final kind of call to action, nugget of wisdom, anything you want to leave the audience with as a sign off?
Well, everyone, it's been a blast. Thanks for inviting me to the webinar, and check out aiven.io on our website. You can get started for free. We have a trial program. Yeah, check us out and yeah, go for a spin. So.
Okay, awesome. Well, thanks, Jeremy. I appreciate your time and all this great information. It's been great, and look forward to seeing you again here next time.